What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here for PackersNews.com, live on Facebook late Monday afternoon. No particular Packers news throughout the day, but did get a sense that Packers fans enjoyed, especially the second half of the NFL doubleheader yesterday when the Philadelphia Eagles dismantled the Packers rivals and current NFC North champion Minnesota Vikings in front of a national audience. So I thought I'd come on and see how everyone's doing now that pretty much there are only two teams left, the Patriots and the Eagles, and we're very, very close to the NFL world being reset. Obviously, the Packers have not yet announced their coaching changes, haven't made the staffs official yet, but I am told that is coming this week. Probably see an announcement here in the next day or two with some availabilities with all the new coaches. So that's something to look forward to. And in the meantime, I thought I'd jump on here. I see a bunch of you have already jumped on. Randy starts us off with Patriots paid off the refs. That's the silliest thing in the world. So let me get this straight. We've just spent like the last decade talking about how the NFL is out to get the Patriots, but now the NFL is helping the Patriots. I can't keep up, people. You called it, Vikings lose. Gordy, I did take the Eagles and the Patriots. I just thought, looking at the tape from that Packers game in Week 16, there were plenty of plays to be made in that game against the Vikings defense. I think they're a much different creature away from home. I still think they're obviously an excellent defense, obviously played well throughout the year, but you're looking at the plays that were available. The Packers just didn't have a quarterback who could take advantage. And with Nick Foles, obviously, that was a guy who played out of his mind last night. Did I expect Nick Foles to play that well against that defense? No, absolutely not. But I did think there would be opportunities there, and I thought he could take advantage of them. And I thought Doug Peterson would do a good job of putting him in positions to take advantage of them. And that's exactly what happened. I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams, including Nick Foles and Doug Peterson, thought it would play out the way it did. But I did think the Eagles would be able to move the ball. Who do you think is taking the Super Bowl? Asks Jose. I really want to say the Patriots, but I do tend to think it'll be I don't know. I want to say the Patriots just because they've been there so long, so many times. They've proven that, they can take a hit to one of their best players in Gronkowski and keep on ticking, I think the Eagles have a better than a puncher's chance. I think it'll be a great game. Ultimately, though, I got to go with Brady and Belichick. That's just early, though. We'll see. We'll see how the next 2 weeks unfold and see how I feel, say, next week. Do you think Nick Foles is going to get paid next year for another team? I doubt it. He's under contract, so there's not much he can do. He could literally help lead them to a Super Bowl victory, and he would still be back in Philadelphia next year backing up Carson Wentz. Foles shows you the value of a legit backup quarterback. Absolutely, as did Case Keenum. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Go with former Packer Doug Peterson. Yeah, Favre's old hunting buddy, getting it done. Thoughts on Mike Vrabel wanting to pursue Darren Perry for the defensive coordinator spot in Tennessee? I did see that report this morning. It would make a lot of sense. Perry is well regarded around the NFL. I know Packer fans don't hold him in very high regard, at least according to my mentions on Twitter. But he is he's thought of quite well around the NFL in coaching circles, evidenced by his interview down there in Houston. Now in the mix for the defensive coordinator spot with the Titans under Vrabel. We'll see how that plays out. Funnily enough, he's still technically under contract in Green Bay. So if he doesn't get those jobs, well, he didn't get the job in Houston, but if he doesn't get the job in Nashville, he could still be back with the Packers. And I think that might be what the Packers are waiting on. Matt, I will not. Matt, you come to Facebook. This is how it works, man. You came to Facebook to type in the word "shut up, Nagler," when my whole job is to talk, man. Use your head, dude. Jason Kidd for safeties coach. I like it. Haley, offensive coordinator in Cleveland. Matt, sure sounds like that's what's happening. I know Adam Schefter reported it a little bit ago. It makes a lot of sense, I guess, but what exactly is Hugh Jackson there for then? Sounding like Hugh Jackson's giving up the play calling? what's he? He's just going to be an overseer, I guess, now? I mean, the great overseer of 1 in 32 or whatever they were. I mean, I don't know, man. Please tell me they won't waste another first-round pick on a cornerback. We have to have an outside rusher. Well, okay. Now, was the Demarius Randall pick a waste, as you're intimating here? I don't think so. The kid played pretty darn good football down the stretch this past season. And, you know, they've obviously taken King, first pick in the second round this year. I don't think those picks were wastes. So, you know, and they're still going to need probably a third guy. Being in nickel 75 to 80% of the time, you need 3 corners. Unless you're giving the job to Lindsey Pipkins or you want Devon House back, they may need to draft another one. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a waste. And to the point, if they need an edge rusher, yes, they obviously need an edge rusher. But they can get one in free agency. They might be able to trade for one. They may be able to get one in rounds 2 or 3. A lot of ways to go about procuring talent. Just because you don't use your very first pick on a position doesn't mean they are punting on it. King looked good until injury. Ray, I absolutely agree. Remember when we didn't draft Myles Jack? Yes, I do. But I also remember when they did draft Kenny Clark, who is now only 22 years old and looks to be a stud in the making. I mean, anybody who's followed me for any length of time knows that I was very much pro the idea of them drafting Myles Jack. I thought he'd be an excellent pick and fit for the Packers. They went with Kenny Clark because of concerns in Jack's knee, which I thought was totally legitimate, totally understood. And at the time, I thought they had made a mistake. But at this point, 2 years in, it's really hard to argue with that Clark pick. He looks like a budding star at the defensive tackle position, a spot that is hard to find stars. You know, I would wait and see what he looks like in his third year before you start lamenting the miss on Myles Jack. Any thoughts on drafting Harold Landry? Yeah, it's funny. His game, the more I look at it, really seems to have done one thing well from year to year. If they can get him to put it all together, yeah, I think that'd be a great pick at 14. You know, obviously, there's a lot of projection there, and that's part of the gig, and that's why those guys get paid the big bucks. But yeah, at 14, I'd love him for the Pack. Who will be the Packers' backup quarterback next season? That is a great question that I think we'll have to wait to get answered throughout the offseason. I do think Hundley will still be on the team, but I do think they have to bring in competition. I tend to think that's what Brian Gutekunst will think as well. Now, whether he decides to draft somebody and or go the free agent route, that remains to be seen. If you look over the kind of cast of characters, so to speak, the 2 or 3 guys who could come free in free agency will most likely want to go someplace where they have a shot to start, or at least go into camp for a competition with a chance to start. And obviously, that's not going to be the case in Green Bay. So yeah, we'll see how the offseason plays out in that regard, but I do think they have to bring in some competition for Hundley. Let's see. Trade up for Roquan? I doubt it. Surprise onside kick at some point in the Super Bowl? I guess it's possible, AJ. Always possible. I mean, both Belichick and Peterson have shown, you know, they're not afraid to gamble. Who is your favorite draft analyst? Ooh, Brett, that's a good question. You know, I got to say Daniel Jeremiah. I think he, you know, his bona fides as far as having been a scout in the NFL for a good long time, his work just as far as the breadth of it and the depth he goes into with so many guys. And obviously he has great resources to work with because of where he works at NFL Network. He's probably my favorite. I loved working with Matt Miller at Bleacher Report. I think he does fantastic work. You know, like I said, we did a live draft show one year where Matt knew every single selection other than there were 2 guys that year that he had not heard of. One was a small school tight end and one was like a Division III offensive tackle, I think. And other than that, he had, you know, on his spreadsheet of 500 guys, he had nailed every single pick as far as like knowing them off the cuff, like off the top of his head. And he does that year in and year out, and it's mind-blowing. It's amazing to watch. You know, I know Matt takes a lot of grief on Twitter from social media GMs, but Miller's the real deal. Mayock. Ray, I'll tell you what, I loved Mayock when he first started. They spread him too thin at NFL Network, and his game calling duties started to get in the way. Back in the day when he first started, he was amazing. If they would ever let him just do draft, I think he would probably shoot back up to the top of my chart, so to speak. I do think he does great work. I just think he's not able to put as much into it as he used to. Do you think Keenum deserves a decent contract with Minnesota? It's interesting how the tenor has completely changed after yesterday's game, isn't it? After the miracle finish against the Saints, people were saying it was a foregone conclusion they were going to bring him back for, re-sign him for a big deal and or use the franchise tag on him. And, midway through the game yesterday, people were calling for Sam Bradford. So, it certainly sounds, lukewarm, so to speak, as far as what they, the quotes that came out from Keenum after that game as far as sticking around Minnesota. We'll see. I mean, they got to do something. Now, maybe they bring Bradford back, but he hasn't shown an ability to stay healthy. Do they go all in with Bridgewater again? I don't know, but I can't imagine them handing over big money to Keenum, but we'll see. We'll see if he hits the market and, maybe sees what else is out there. Maybe takes a visit to Green Bay to try and give back at the Vikings. You never know. Where does Kirk Cousins land next season? Good question, Hanson. It's funny, I know everyone had thought up until a couple months ago that the 49ers were the foregone conclusion. And I know Scott McLuhan was on the radio saying he didn't see a special quarterback, a good player, but not a special player. I tend to think he'll have to wait till after the draft. I really do. Because I can't imagine people forking over huge money for this guy that, has looked good but not great. Then again, it is a QB-needy league, so maybe Cleveland, if they refuse to draft a quarterback, or even if they do draft a quarterback and they want a bridge QB. But whoever it is going to have to pay pretty big money. So maybe he stays in Washington. We'll have to wait and see. Do you think Jimmy Graham is a good fit for the Packers? It's a two kind of edged sword. I understand. I think the move makes sense in and of itself because of the fact that his skill set fits well in the Packers offense. You saw the difference that Cook made when Jared Cook was in Green Bay, how he opened up everything on offense. I think Jimmy Graham would do that. The problem is he's a terrible blocker, but so is Cook. But he's a terrible blocker, and he seems to be a bit of a front runner in that when things are going well, he produces and his head's in the game and he's great. But when things aren't going well or the team doesn't target him a lot, he does seem to kind of disappear for stretches. So, all that said, I think if they can make the money work, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to come to Green Bay. Now, two things got to happen. Obviously, number one, he has to actually leave Seattle, and that hasn't happened yet. Now, Seattle has roughly $14 million underneath the cap, and they're going to need some of that other places. And I don't know how much they're going to want to allocate to an aging veteran tight end. Now, that said, they are kind of transitioning at this point. I mean, they've completely cleaned house coaching staff-wise, and maybe they want to try to emphasize the offensive side of the ball a little bit more after spending all this money on the defense. So, we'll see. He has to hit free agency, and if that happens, will the Packers line up with people in the silly money type, time of free agency, which is the first 2 days, really, first 48 hours. The legal tampering period starts 2 days before free agency kicks off on March. The legal tampering period starts March 12th. The actual tampering period starts, at the combine. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I have trouble imagining Gutekunst shelling out big money at tight end to kick off his regime, so to speak. But you never know. We'll see. Will McCarthy continue to call plays? Yes, Sam. Yes, he will. Graham heads back to New Orleans? Possibly, Nick. I guess that's a possibility if he hits free agency. And I don't know what their... I know they've got Hill and I know they had Fleener, but I know he was injured. I don't know what his contract status is at this point, though. How much do the Packers have under the cap? Roughly $30 million, Patrick. That's give or take. I think it's a little less than that now, actually, with the signings of Lindsley and Adams, but it's around there. There are good tight ends in the draft. Don, there are. The problem with going and getting a tight end in the draft is it's very rare. I mean, super rare that rookie tight ends contribute their rookie years. That is just a truism throughout the NFL. No matter how talented they are, no matter what their offense is, it's a big jump from doing what they're asked to do in college to doing what they're asked to do in the pros, and especially in Green Bay, where the tight ends are asked to do everything. I mean, block inline, block in the backfield, run out of the backfield, split wide, play receiver, read coverages in sync with Rodgers, get all the protections, get the route adjustments at the line, get the route adjustments after the snap of the ball. I mean, they're asked to do a million things. And if you're a rookie, you're swimming, man. It's hard. So, yeah, there is talent there, no doubt, no question about it. But how much it's going to, contribute or will be able to contribute in 2018, that's dubious. Let's see. Stop reading my comments on tight end via Silverstein. How about Brate? Maybe not as expensive as Graham. I actually like Brate. I think he's really good. I'll be very surprised if Tampa lets him go. I mean, they did draft O.J. Howard, so they kind of have to make way, so to speak. But, yeah, I mean, he would be an excellent addition, I think. When do they make Rodgers the highest paid player? Len, sometime this summer is my guess. I mean, obviously I don't have any inside information there, but I would tend to think, yeah, it'll be sometime over the course of the summer, maybe before free agency starts, so maybe in the spring, but I tend to think it'll happen after free agency, so they can settle whatever kind of pay scale they're going to have there, and then work with Rodgers' contract from there. But, make no mistake, one of the big reasons they've been rolling over cap space the last couple of years is in anticipation of this offseason. Because after this year, Rodgers has very little incentive to sign an extension before hitting kind of the end of his deal and forcing the Packers to use a franchise tag on him, which would be, going to start to get close to $28 million per year, if not more. And Rodgers obviously can command that. There's no question about it. You could ask for it up front, and the Packers would not have to pay it, but they would probably pay it. So yeah, I think this summer is when you'll see that deal get done. Oh, thanks, Dustin. Yeah, Jamal was really fun. If you guys haven't checked it out, Dustin was referencing a video. I got to chat with Jamal Williams for a little bit. He was at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. I talked to him on Friday. I put the video up this morning. So if you haven't seen it, check PackersNews.com. Foles to the Cardinals? James, it's possible. They finally hired a coach. But if Foles is going to go anywhere, he's going to have to get traded because he's under contract in Philadelphia next year. What type of money is Rodgers going to get? All of it, AJ. As far as front or backloaded contract, they'll do. Since Russ Ball is still there, you got to think they'll continue to be pay as you go, which means remember his last deal, they ensured that he never got over. I think it was like $23 million per year. He never became a huge chunk of their salary cap. It was always kind of steady Eddie, so to speak. There was never a huge spike, which is what where lots of teams used to get in trouble. And obviously, he'll get a huge signing bonus. He'll get monster money. He'll get the highest. He'll be the highest paid quarterback ever, highest paid player ever, until the next quarterback signs, most likely. But yeah, I don't think knowing Russ Ball and his track record, there's no way it becomes a cap-wrecking contract. Let's see. Giants hire Pat Shurmur as head coach. Yep, that's been, Jay Glazer reported that during the game last night. Rodgers needs an O-line. No wonder dude gets hurt just about every season. Well, he's got a really good offensive line, one of the best in the game, actually. Now, Bulaga got hurt, and that hurt them. And then, Bakhtiari missed 4 games. That hurt them. But when the starters are in there, they've got a very good offensive line. Obviously, the issue comes at right tackle. When Bulaga went down, Jason Spriggs had to step up and did not answer the bell. They put McCray, a guard, out there who actually played pretty well, all things considered, but he's a guard. So Yeah, the offensive line needs a little bit of fortification, but it's in a much better place than some Packer fans would have you believe. Vikings laid an egg. Yes, they did. Have you heard the status of Rodgers' health lately? No, Travis, we don't have any access to Rodgers in the offseason. We're, just waiting patiently like all of you. We'll get our first look at him in mid-April, prior to the draft, when they kick off the offseason program. Any word on Joe Witt Jr.? Wade, yes, he'll be on the staff. He got a promotion, I believe. We haven't got this official yet, but I believe he'll be an assistant to Mike Pettin. We should know more in the next day or two. The Packers are set, from what I hear, the Packers are set to announce their staff in the next 24 or 48 hours, and we should get some kind of media availability with the guys probably Tuesday or Wednesday. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for jumping on. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. They do fly by very fast, but thanks so much, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow and pretty much every day through the Super Bowl during the week to chat Packers with you, because there's always something to talk about, right? Thanks so much. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. We got Michael Cohen down in Mobile checking out the Senior Bowl this week, so we'll have tons of updates on all the participants there and all the goings-on in the NFL world, because it never stops. Thanks a lot, everyone. Make sure you check PackersNews.com, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.